Good evening. I'm really pleased to see such a nice turnout on such a really crappy night, so thank you so much for coming. I'm Linda Tiener. I'm the Executive Director at UFM Community Learning Center, which is the sponsor of the Lou Douglas Lecture Series. Our series is named for Professor Lou Douglas, who was a distinguished professor of political science at Kansas State University from 1949 until 1977. He was widely known for his power to inspire students, faculty, and citizens to instigate change and to motivate grassroots organizations and individuals to pursue social justice in politics, economics, and foreign policy. UFM Community Learning Center was started over 41 years ago by a K-State faculty and students who really wanted a setting where they could discuss issues, to share, and to learn from each other. We invite the community to share skills and interests with each other and therefore learn from each other. Last year, over 29,000 people participated in UFM activities. Before we get started with the lecture, there are just a few housekeeping items that I wanted to take care of. Following the lecture, there will be a question and answer period, as with all of our Lou Douglas lectures. If you need to leave when the lecture is finished, please do so quietly so that the question and answers can go ahead and proceed and everyone can hear. We ask that you come to one of the mics to ask your question, again, so that everyone can hear the question as well as the response by our speaker. I would like to also announce that our next Lou Douglas lecture will be on Tuesday, November the 3rd at 7 o'clock here. And we'll be having a speaker talking about Kansas energy policy, kind of the politics of what's been going on in Kansas the last few years and how it may impact global issues with energy and the environment. Also, I wanted to announce that tomorrow morning, Mr. Deng will be available for informal conversation with students and faculty at 10 o'clock in Union 204. So if you'd like to continue the discussion tomorrow morning, please come to 204 here in the Union for more conversation with Mr. Deng. Tonight's lecture was influenced by the large interest that we've seen at UFM among students on the topic of human rights issues in Africa. We know of students who have participated in mission trips to African countries, and we know that there are students who have been participating in relief efforts in Sudan for several years now. So when we were looking at speakers for the fall, we thought it might be appropriate to bring someone who could speak to the issues that we know students are interested in. So our speaker tonight is Simon Deng. Mr. Deng was forced into slavery at the age of 9 years old. Following his getaway from slavery, he worked as a messenger in the Sudanese parliament, later became a national swimming champion, and in 2006, he had the chance to speak before the United Nations Human Rights Commission in Geneva, Switzerland. He has launched a number of awareness activities, including a Sudan Freedom Walk in 2006 that went from New York to Washington, D.C. He is going to have a lot of interesting stories and a lot of insight into what's been going on in the Sudan and in Africa with human rights issues. So I'm going to let him just tell his story straight to you. So I would like to introduce to you Mr. Simon Deng.
Thank you very much, Linda. Good evening. Thank you, and thank you for coming out this evening. I know that most of you have commitments, but you've chosen to come and listen to my story. First, allow me to thank everybody and those who put this function together, especially those who work in Community Learning Center. By having me here today, you have given me a chance to be the voice of the voiceless. My name is Simon Deng. I come from Sudan. I'm a Shuluk by tribes. Most of you are aware of Sudan on the crisis that coming out from the western part of Sudan, a region of Darfur. But today, probably some of you will hear things that you never heard, the things that took place in Sudan. I come from a country which is devastated by war for a very long times. I come from a country where human beings are still bought and sold into the slavery. And I'm standing before you today as a living proof of the slavery that still exists today in a country of Sudan. To most of you as students, when you hear about the slavery, each one of you always assume that you have to read it from the books because you assume that the slavery is the history of the past. And absolutely you're right. Slavery is supposed to be the history of the past, but when it comes to the case of Sudan, slavery still exists, and slavery still exists up to today. When I was 9 years old, I was kidnapped by an Arab man, taken away from my lovely family, in which I was robbed from what a child always deserves, which is love from mom and dad and brothers and sisters. I was taken to the northern Sudan, and that gentleman went on and gave me away to his relative as a gift. Of course, when we talk about gift, we always assume that we're talking about something you have to buy and wrap it up and give it to somebody that you admire. But today, you're looking at a human being made from the image of God that happened to be a gift. And that person is me. I spent 3.5 years as a child, but was not being considered as a child. I spent 3.5 years going through what a child should not go through. When we talk about the slavery, of course, we know the brutality that comes with it. When we talk about the slavery, the way you read it from the history books, it goes from a human being that is no longer a human being. A human being has to be there to wait for what he or she have to be ordered by the slave master in every form where he or she have no right to say no. And I know it for fact. In the village that I was being kept as a slave in Sudan, they don't have running water. People get their water from the river Niles. And usually the donkeys are the ones always carrying the water from the Nile into the houses. But since they have a slave in that house, that job is mine. I have to be the ones who get up earlier, and I have to be the ones who go to sleep late, simply because I have a lot of work to do. When we talk about I'm the last to go to bed, I don't have a regular place like any human beings where I can call as bed. My place is the place where they kept the animals, in which by itself I have to make sure that place is clean because this is where I will spend the night. I was constantly kept under terror, being beaten, being tortured, even that I did nothing wrong at all. I know only one word, and that word is yes, and yes to everything that I'm being told to do. Even yes to do things that a human being, leave out a child, should not be forced to do that, because I don't have options. I don't know how to say no to anything. That is what it means when I talk about I'm being robbed of my dignity as a human being and turned into a piece of property where I have to be weighed, to be ordered to do things that a child should not go there. People have to eat, in which I have to wait if there is left over. This is where I rely, and this is where I consider as my food. I cannot share a cup that everybody drinks in. My cup is being kept separately because I was not being seen as a human being. My fellow human beings, to talk about what happened to me as a child, believe it or not, it is not easy, because what I am telling you or what you hear from me, it is not the whole things. And you have to forgive me and understand that, because I'm a human being like one of you. I was being treated worse than animals because I was not being seen as a human being. From where I used to receive love from my mom and my dad and my brothers, now I have to take everything day by day, in which always the day that I'm in is no longer is being counted. I always hope for tomorrow, because I have to deal with the torture. I have to deal with demonizations. And I have to arm myself with hope, assuming that one day or tomorrow somebody will come and realize that a child should not go through what I'm going through. And that hope came when that family have to move to the big city because their son have to join junior high schools. In that village, they didn't have junior high school at that time. It was in that city, a city of Kosti in the northern Sudan, where I saw the three gentlemen that happened to have the Shuluk tribal marks in their forehead like what I have today. I didn't have those tribal marks at that time. When I saw them, it was the hope that I had been waiting for came to me. It was something that I had been patient for is here. And I went to them to tell them that what I'm going through. Most important, since I didn't have those tribal marks that I have today, I have to tell them everything using the word of mouth, telling them my mom names, my dad name, the name of the village that I came from in the southern Sudan. I have to convince them, because I could not believe that for 3.5 years now I'm seeing people who came from my tribe from southern Sudan. And one of them said to me that he knows somebody who came from the village that I mentioned. They will go and talk to that individuals, and they will come back the following days. I got disappointed without realizing the tears just ran down in my eyes. And then the other gentleman put his arm on my shoulder to console me, to calm me down, telling me that we are not abandoning you, or don't think that we are not believing what you told us. The only thing that we didn't come from the part where you came from, but there is a gentleman who came from the village you mentioned to us, and of course we will come with him tomorrow. Don't get disappointed. Since I have been so patient for 3.5 years, then I have to be patient to anything that they're telling me. And then the following days, I was in the same locations, and here they came 4 of them. And I could not believe my eyes seeing somebody that I knew back then in the southern Sudan, in my village. I was so happy, but that individual broke down in tears crying. The reasons why he was crying, because what happened in my disappearance, my father did put an offer, 10 cow for anyone who will come forward. And that person will be rewarded 10 cow. 2 years came and passed by. Nobody came forward to claim the 10 cows. And then my family went on to mourn, put together funerals for their dead child without knowing how that child died. And that is why that individual was crying, because he cannot believe his eye, seeing a child that being considered as a dead child, and now he is looking at him. He was the one who promised me that he is going to do everything to take me out from that miserable situation that I'm in which he have to advise me not to inform my slave masters, because according to him, if they will know, they will take me somewhere else. And indeed, I have to take everything he told me. He was the ones who took me out from the slavery in which I was taken back, and I was reunited with my loved ones. Yes, my fellow human being, after I got out from the slavery, I decided that I will never, ever talk about what happened to me. I decided to go on with my life like any other human beings, because I could not believe that I can get away in what I has been in for those years. And indeed, I kept those promises. And even later on, there was a peace in Sudan which became known as Addis Ababa Agreement between the North and the South. It was a temporary peace where people start moving between the North and the South. The only person who cannot leave the South, it was me, because I was afraid. I was afraid that I will be kidnapped again and I will not be found. But eventually I have to break that taboo. And I immigrate all the way to Khartoum, the capital of Sudan. And I went to look for a job. I got a job in the parliament as a messenger. And later on, I went and pursued the sport of swimming, in which eventually I became a Sudanese swimming champion. It was not easy even to get into that sport, but that is a different story by itself, which needs its own times. Being a Sudanese champion in Sudan, in Khartoum, yes, I have a privileges not other Southerners have. At that time, there is a law being adopted in Sudan as Kasha, which is clean the city. Clean the city from the black peoples, taking them back to the war zone, because Southern Sudan is being considered as a war zone. And we Africans, we come from traditions where we always socialize by doing a local drinks. That itself, it become a crime in the Islamic State Sudan, where the police will go into the refugees camps surrounded Khartoum and jails every single woman that found that there is a local drink in that place. We're talking about places where the government is not providing anything to them. We're talking about places where the government even is not providing a water nor hospital to those peoples. And without realizing, the government have to open up jails and jails and jails full of Southern Sudanese women, children that happen to be born in those prisons, children that happen to be taken into prison with their mothers as infants. And the worst of all, most of those children end up dead. The environment is not suitable to a child. And then, For those whom their relative being taken to those prisons, they will come to me and ask me if I can go and release them. Of course, I cannot say no. The first times I went there carrying a list that being given to me by those who have their loved ones in prisons. And the numbers were shocking, thousands and thousands in a sense, because that place was not being designed as prisons. And then, while I was there in the morning, they brought out 6 infants, kids being dead overnight. And then I thought that maybe, that's how it is. The third day I was called by others to release their loved one. I went there and I find the same situations. And I said, why every time I came here in the early morning and now the car is being filled with those kids being taken to the cemetery? What is really happening? Something wrong is going on in this place. And I took that initiative to investigate, to come every day. And the answer was obvious, the same things. So I took the case to the vice presidents of that country, in which I was being told that, yes, I am their boys, according to him, Interwaletna, you are our boy. You can have anything you want, but don't interfere with the security of the nations. And I asked Mr. Vice President, what did that security have to do with the child? Can you tell me that what crime that little infant committed? What threat that the nation is going to receive from a child that was being born in jail, or the child was being born yesterday and was taken to prison with her moms? And he felt embarrassed. And he went on to say, yes, our meeting finished with you, but we are warning you. If you keep doing what you're doing, then you're going to end up where we cannot even save your neck. That itself is a threat. I came out disappointed, and I said to myself, I am being accepted because of who I am, but my people are not. Then if that is the case, why should I be in that country? Why should I be there as part of them and my people going through this, knowing that what I went through as a child? And I said to myself, I'm not longer belong to this place. And I bought my one-way ticket to the United States, seeking freedoms. Most important, to come and tell the world the atrocity being committed by the government of Sudan on the black peoples, and nobody is talking about it. It was here in the United States, in the city of New York. One of the journalists wrote a paper, an articles in the Citizens, in which he explained the issue of slavery, saying that you can buy a human being in Sudan for $10 or $5. When I read that articles, to me, everything I did try to put behind me came back to me. It took me 3 nights. I'm debating myself whether I have to keep on living in a denial or to come forward to tell the world that when you talk about the slavery in Sudan, it is true, yes, I was the ones. Because I felt very strongly that there is nothing to be ashamed of. I felt very strongly that I didn't commit any crime to be ashamed of what I was being subject to. If there is any person who have to be ashamed, is the person who enslaved me. And then I opened my mouth, because I felt that as the way I saw the freedom, it will take somebody who is free to free somebody who is not free. Then if I'm so lucky to be a lucky victim in a free nation, speaking to the free people like you today, then it will be a crime to me if I'm going to be silenced, knowing what the people are going through. Because when they talk about buying a child for $10, I know what it means. That child is in a position where he or she cannot say no. And that was the reasons I dedicate my life to be the voice of the voiceless. Yes, my fellow human being, of course, we know Sudan today of the atrocity and the crime that being committed by the same government that is slaughtered Southern Sudanese for a very long time, since 1955. And allowed me to elaborate on that a little bit, if you may. Sudan got independent from the British in 1956, and the atrocity and the war started in 1955. From 1955 until 1972, the Islamic government in Khartoum is slaughtered 1.5 million Southern Sudanese. My fellow human beings, if that itself is not a genocide, how do we call that one? There was a peace agreement being signed in Addis Ababa, and that I mentioned before become known Addis Ababa agreements in 1972, where the Southerners felt that probably the Northerners now are genuine and are honest when it comes to the issue of peace. And that peace has been embraced by the Southern Sudanese. After that, the sitting government in Khartoum turned around and every day change everything in a country, even to the point that they went and to introduce Islamic law as the law of the lands, in which Sharia law was introduced in Sudan. And that became known to everybody today. Sudan is the only African nation. Sudan is the only country in the continent Africa being run and ruled by the Sharia law. And the Southern Sudanese make an argument, we have peace that we sign. How can you introduce the Sharia law and impose those laws on 16 million non-Muslims in a country, the Southerners? And Nimeri at that time went to address the nation to justify his position and the action that he took, in which he went on to explain, and I quote him. That peace agreement that the Southerners is talking about, it is not a Bible, nor it is not a Quran. It is a peace agreement in a piece of paper that I signed, in which I have every right as a president to come up with a law which is suitable to the nations, and those law is the Islamic law. And for the Southerners, and for those who will not follow the law of the lands, I will declare jihad on them. And in 1983, the jihad was declared on the Southern Sudanese, in which the government of Sudan went on to recruit every single young man in the schools all over the nations to take arms to go and kill the infidels in the Southern Sudan. And the government of Sudan went out so ruthlessly and burned down every single village in the Southern Sudan in the name of jihad. And they slaughtered 2 million Southern Sudanese, that being called by their definition infidels. And they left 7 million Southern Sudanese as refugees in a neighbor's country. Even in Khartoum, there are 4 million Southern Sudanese in their own country. The largest and the biggest refugees since World War II happen to be in Sudan. The government went on to arm the Arab tribes in the western part of Sudan, give them arms to go into the southern Sudan to loot Every cattle that be owned by those infidels, and most important, kills men and women and take the younger one into their slavery. That become known by the UN that you can buy a human being in Sudan for $10 or $5. That is Sudan. That is piece of information was not being brought to you when we are debating the atrocity that is happening today in the regions of Darfur. The government in Khartoum didn't stop in the south. They went to the Nuba Mountains in the name of Islamization and Arabizations. And according to them, those African culture is a savage culture, need to be transformed and changed and be given a good culture. A religion that everybody deserves in this country. And they slaughter Nubians, unfortunately. Nobody have figures. Because Nuba Mountains in Sudan, it happened in a remote area. If you close the door that taking you in and the door that taking you out, nobody knows what is happening there. And God knows how many Nubians were being slaughtered in the name of Islamization and Arabizations. Of course, when you give arms to individuals that not being guided by rules and law, we are talking about the Arab tribes. And those Arab tribes, they happen to be in the western Sudan, where that place is known to you today as Darfur. And then they misuse their power. They thought that everything that they're doing in the south, they can do it also in the western Sudan. And that became an issue. It became an issue, then even the government of Khartoum or the sitting government cannot admit in Sudan at that time, because for the records, if we have anyone that knows Sudan or we have anyone that has come from that region, the government always call it Nahab al-Musallah, which is armed robberies. The same thing that they have been using, because they are good in using sophisticated words. In the south, they used to call it Zaman al-Hawadis, a time of incidents. Incident always, as we know, happen once. How can you have incident for 22 years? Or how can you have incident even going on before independence and still you call it incidents? But that is Khartoum. Because nobody always questioning them. And they always get away by manipulating the world. Because if you tell an Arab who came from Sudan, this is a light, they're going to say, this is not a light because you said so. Unfortunately, those in Darfur happen to worship the same religions like those whom are in power in Khartoum. I come from Sudan. I know those in Darfur, they believe in the religion of Islam, and they worship the religion of Islam even better than those who call themselves Arabs. And then the question is being asked, then why are they now being victimized? And everybody has his own theory. Why the evil government in Khartoum, after they slaughter 3.5 million in the southern Sudan, and these people are called by them as infidels, how can they justify killing their own fellow Muslims? To me, that left me with one answer. Those peoples in Darfur, the Four, the Masalit, and the Zagawa, These are African tribes. They still carrying the African languages as their own languages. They still carrying or practice African culture as part of way of life, even that they are Muslims. Being slaughtered by who? The Arab tribes. The Bagara Arab tribe being given arm by the government. The Rezegat Arab tribes, who happened, by the way, have slaughtered thousands and thousands and thousands in the southern Sudan, and the government always looked the other ways. Yes, the crime being committed in Darfur, but in my opinions, this is not a new thing. Even the sitting government in Khartoum said it himself. Why the world is crying today about a tiny problem that happened in the Western Sudan? We have been in this problem for so long, and even what happened in Darfur when we talk about 200,000, and I'm talking about Hassan Omar al-Bashir is speaking now. This all being exaggerated. The only people who die is 9,000. For God's sakes, my fellow human beings, we know that in this country where we believe that we are all being created as human beings, we deserve freedoms that God has given to every single one of us. When you kill a human being, that being called a murderer. When you kill 2 or 5, that being called a slaughter. What about Omar when he kills 9,000, according to him, not 200,000? Thank you. By getting involved and becoming the voice. Thank you by not sitting and being bystander. And thank you by being the champions of those who have no voice in Sudan, and most important, those who perish in the evil government in Khartoum. Because most of you who got involved and become the voice of those victims in Darfur, you felt that by doing nothing, you're telling the perpetrator, go ahead. Because history told us and taught us from the previous atrocity that took place, and the world did nothing. Yes, when we talk about the genocide, it didn't start in southern Sudan, it didn't start in Darfur. We have to go back, and I can pick 2 or 1 or 3. Everything goes back to the time of Joseph Stalin. And also that we have to go back to Pol Pot in Cambodia. And most important, who will forget when the world did nothing at the time when evil Hitler started slaughtering innocent peoples. And everybody then said, he's not on my backyard. Why should we bother? He's not going to come to me. All he's doing, or all the killing that he's doing, it happened in Auschwitz. And the world did nothing. And millions was slaughtered, and millions was left to die in as skeletons. And in the end, the world have to pay a big price. Rwanda happened before our own eyes, in which I myself am guilty because I did nothing. I didn't say a word. And that being echoed by former senator from Illinois, Paul Simons, when he said that we all guilty. We all guilty because we choose to do nothing. And most important, if you would have said something, we in the Senate, we in the government probably would act, because we are here doing what you're supposed to be doing, and we are here as your voice, but you decided to do nothing, and Rwanda happens. Even though the United Do-Nothing nations were there, and they walk away, even to the point they were threatening those whom they did call to come for the safety and given shelter. And that is why I don't believe in United Do-Nothing nations. My fellow human being, the reason I'm here today, when the genocide was taking place in Sudan, even that nobody said it the way it is, when the government troops come, always we have to run. We have to run into the bush with our own lives. I personally, witnessing my fellow friends being shot before my own eyes, I personally witnessing the elders in my village being burned alive by the evil government in Khartoum. But I'm alive because I ran away. Thank God that the United Do-Nothing nation was not there to tell me not to run, come here, because we saw the results in Rwanda. And for anyone who believes in UN, let's go to Rwanda and ask those skeleton bones we have today, do you believe in UN? And that is the reasons I personally don't believe in that body. That it is the United Nations that sent a special envoy to Sudan to investigate the slavery. And they came back with all evidence, and they decided to do nothing. My fellow human being, those victims, their voice being heard today because you took a stand. Those victims, their case is not going to go without being noted because you decided to be their voice. And believe it or not, I have visited the refugees camp in Sudan, in the Western Sudan, in the Southern Sudan, even though the government of Sudan is running after me. What I always got from those victims is go back and tell Americans, please don't forget us. Please be our own eyes. Please be our own voice. Please speak up on our own behalf. And if you see the tears in my eyes, this is not my tears. These are the tears of those whom are sitting today in the camp waiting to be killed tomorrow by ruthless governments. And that is why they're counting on you. And you have done a lot. You have done a lot. Because the case of Darfur today become known because you got involved. My case was not known in Southern Sudan because nobody was there to speak on my behalf. My fellow human being, it once said by the man that we admire today, and I quote him, when he said our life begin to end when we become silent on the things that matter. What happened in Sudan is matter. And that was Martin Luther King Jr. word. Sudan is no longer far away from us. Sudan is no longer a place where we have to avoid, simply because we have 500,000 Southern Sudanese in this country that happen to be our fellow citizens of this lovely nation of ours. Most of you are probably aware of the lost boys and the lost girls. These are the kids that their parents was slaughtered by the government in Sudan. These are the kids who walked from Southern Sudan all the way to Ethiopia and back again. And believe it or not, these are the tiny fraction of those who survive. I know it. I know it. I was watching. I was seeing them. And if you run into one of them, ask them, every one of them has a story to tell. What I'm trying to say, to do nothings. To do nothings. Tomorrow you will look back and you feel guilty and you say that, I wish I would have done some things. Especially you, the students, you may not have a power as an elected official, as a leader. But believe it or not, you have a power you don't see. You have a power of the pen. Use it. Because you happen to be in a position that tomorrow you're going to be the leader and the future of this free nation of ours. Tomorrow you're going to be somebody. How can you become somebody and you was not somebody when somebody was crying there to help and you walk away? Even your conscience will not set you free. Gandhi himself said, be the change that you want to see in the world. And you are doing it. And I'm encouraging you, don't look down by saying that I have no power. Don't look down to yourself because you happen to be tomorrow a judge. You happen to be the president tomorrow. You happen to be a Nobel Peace Prize tomorrow because you happen to be the future leader in which that this world of ours, we always hope that this world is supposed to be full of love, peace, and forgiveness. But this world is boiling. This world is boiling, and this world needs peoples like you. And today, especially the youth of these nations, probably they are not being compared to the youth of 200 years ago or 100 years ago. And the reason I said that, I saw it with my own eyes. When I did a freedom walk from New York all the way to Washington, D.C., I was joined by thousands and thousands of students who said that we are not going to be bystander. We have to be the voice. And the youngest walkers happened to be 6 years old. Think about it. And he was very concerned. If 6 years old is concerned, can we ask ourselves questions? What about us, who happen to be older than 6 years old? My fellow human beings, we have to act when our conscience is telling us wrong is wrong and right is right. Since we know that the action we're taking based on right, then we should not be ashamed. We have to be tall and powerful. And raising our voice, we have to stop, because this world is for all of us, regardless of our color, regardless of where we come from. And when one person of our fellow human being being victimized in Sudan, we have to say no, because wrong is wrong. Today, the president of Sudan is the most wanted head of the state ever today, was indicted by ICC. It was because people like you got involved. When I walk in Europe lobbying and questioning ICC, I was joined by your fellow countrymen and my fellow countrymen, students from NYU, from Georgetown University, and we walked from Belgium all the way to Netherlands to ask ICC 5 hypothetical questions. At that time, they had Milosevic, who passed away. over there, and they have child terror. My question to them, put the crime being committed by two gentlemen that you have will not even come close by the crime being committed by the government in Khartoum. Why do we have always a double standard? And they did act. And those students today will be the one telling you that the action they took is produced something. To take a stance is not being measured by how tall you are, how old you are. Is being measured by your conscience. My fellow human being, I'm asking you again, get involved and be the voice. Let all of us speak up on behalf of those who cannot speak for themselves. Let all of us be the voice of those who have no voice. And I'm asking you, act and act now, because tomorrow is too late. Thank you very much.
Please free to come up and ask questions and have more discussion. Just come up to the mic to do so. If you need to leave, please leave quietly. And I would remind you that you have a chance to visit individually tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock in Union Room 204. Thank you all for coming. And please do come with questions. Don't be shy.
No problem. No problem. You can ask it.
You've enunciated a pretty low opinion of the UN, and the ICC can't really do anything until the government leaves Sudan. Do you think there are any other international bodies? Do you have any faith in the African Union?
Unfortunately, no. And that is why your voice is needed. And that is why you, as a people of concerns, you have to raise your voice and questioning the world bodies, because ICC is part of the United Nations. Yes, according to what I know, after 6 months, if the perpetrator is not apprehended, ICC is supposed to go before the Security Councils and handle the case to the Security Councils, whereby that the Security Council have to do what always they do, talk about sanctions. And we know sanction being imposed on the others and will never even materialize. But this is where the rules of the law have to be questioned. We have somebody who said it openly to the world that 200,000 is exaggerations, 400,000 is not true, only 9,000. And if the world cannot apprehend that individuals to come and answer how these 9,000 die, then we have to tell the world and we have to tell every government that if that's the case, then we have to open up all the prisoners or all the prisons that we have and let everybody go. Because you cannot hold somebody who killed one person and you have an individual who killed 9,000 and is still walking around. African Union is a body that is not functioning. It is being run basically by most dictators, including Sudan as part of it, including Mugabe is part of it, including Gaddafi is part of it as a founder also. So African unions, you cannot count on them. We're counting on your voice. And with everything I said, I really mean it. You have to be the ones. Believe it or not, if it was not the voice of all of you and other peoples over the world, people of good wills, nobody even would have been talking about what is happening in Darfur. And that is why I talked about tomorrow will be too late, because the war didn't stop. And even now, the peace which is being signed between the North and the South is coming to an end. And that war that would take place between the North and the South is going to be worse and worse than what is happening in Darfur. And it has been worse anyway. There's no doubt about it. You saw the figure 3 million, and nobody talking about it. But you have to look at the bigger pictures, because this time is not going to be Sudan alone. It's going to involve entire Horn of Africa. It's going to involve Kenya, it's going to involve Uganda, it's going to involve Eritrea, it's going to involve everybody there. And American happened to be the one who brought that peace. And now we're seeing it is getting through the windows. It's about times. Because every day, nobody even challenged the sitting government in Khartoum, including us, our leaders. Nobody's challenging them by even violating some of the things that we part of signatory as witness. So I don't believe in the African unions. I believe in your voice as people of concerns.
Thank you for your very impassioned speech. I'm Kenyan by birth, and I've been to some of the places of which you speak. I've lived here for over 20 years in the US, and I've also been sickened by the inability of the United Nations to act effectively, particularly in Africa, as well as other parts of the world. I've been struck by the fact that for some political reasons, they need to appoint figureheads of the United Nations, Boutros Boutros-Ghali, Kofi Annan, Ban Ki-moon, who don't seem to me to have credibility on the world stage. If you had a magic wand and you could do something with the do-nothing United Nations, what would it be?
Thank you very much, Mose. You know, when I criticized the UN, even one time I was told when I was at the UN in one event that I am anti-United Nations. I'm not anti-United Nations, I'm anti-inability of the United Nations. The United Nations was found on good things. The declarations of the human right itself, that document based on good things. But today, United Nations is being hijacked by the nation, and that's why I call it United Do-Nothing Nations. At the time when the government of Sudan was involved with atrocity in the region of Darfur, leave out the south, the UN was busy to elect the government of Sudan to be the chair of the UN, of human rights. And you have to ask yourself, how come? Here you have young kids walking on the street every day, rallying before the United Do-Nothings to act. And now they elected the government of Sudan to be on the chair of the Human Rights Commission at the United Nations. That's beyond me. What we're trying to do by criticizing them, probably they will look in their souls and do the right things. Of course, you mentioned some individuals, and I'm familiar to it, especially Boutros Ghali. When he was brought, at that time was brought because to appease Africans. And then the Africans themselves said, but this is not our candidate. Boutros Ghali happened to come from Egypt, and Egypt doesn't consider himself as Africans. They call themselves Ummat al-Arabiya, which is the mother of the Arab worlds. How can these men, an Arab, represent the Africans? But since we just got out from war in Iraq, which Egypt was part of the Gulf War, the first war, and we went there because of the support of Egypt, we have to reward them something. There is always politics, and that politics comes down also even to the point whereby that the leaders can turn a blind eye on the atrocity. And I wish every day to look at how incapable the UN is. We should grab the books that are written by the generals who was in charge in Rwanda at that time, Roman Dallaire, the Canadian generals. When the UN decided, then we abandon you. Since you're trying to do the right thing, that's not the UN roles, and so on and so on. And he almost went crazy. So United Nations, the way it is not living up with the moral principles of the Universal Declaration of the Human Rights. They are there just to serve their purposes. They are there to dictate whether China have to get away, making things so obstacles, or making obstacles when it comes to Sudan. Russia have to be the obstacle because they're selling arms to Khartoum, and nothing being done. So I think that's come down to what I have been saying. Since we cannot overthrow the UN, then we have to use our voice. Probably, it will ring a bell in their heads. And that is where all of us have to be involved. All of us have to get involved and be the voice. And this needs every single one of us. Because the way it is, the United Nations is not the way it is being founded on.
You said that there's a war coming in the Horn of Africa that's going to involve more than just one country. Why is that?
It's a good question, by the way. You have to look at Sudan itself. Is neighbors by 9 countries. You have to look at the war that we're fighting today, which has become known to everybody, war on terror. Fighting Osama bin Laden's. Al-Qaeda, which is Al-Qaeda in Arabic, was not found in Afghanistan by Osama bin Laden. It was formed in Khartoum with the help of the leadership that is in place today in Sudan. And then when we talk about it, then nobody even pay attention. We were told, even here in the States, because you went through a lot, you want to drag us in your problems. And we told them, no, that's not our problems. If we are being killed because of what we believe in as infidels, according to them, what makes you? What makes you? Nobody listens until they came to World Trade Center number 1. And I cried loudly. Then to everybody in the United States to listen. For you, assuming that you apprehend the blank check, Sheikh Umar Abdurrahman, and their followers who came out to the United States carrying the Sudanese passport, by the way, 6 of them. If you assume that you solve the problem by putting this man behind bar, then you have to wake up and smell the coffee. This is the beginning. Nobody listens. Nobody listens. If somebody would have listened, the war that we're fighting today, our brothers and sisters who perish, they would be alive with us. Those who die in Twin Towers in New York, they would be still with us today. But we don't learn. Look at the continent, how it has. When I talk about it's going to involve those countries, believe it or not, it is true. Sudan happened to be expanding its agenda through others. And those whom are being now squeezed by the policy coming out of Khartoum, they are not happy. Somalia today has happened to be the second Taliban of Africa. And they're getting the support from Khartoum. Who is next? Tanzania is on the list. Eritrea is on the list. Kenya is on the list. And Uganda is on the list. Believe it or not, if we cannot get involved and bring peace in that part of the world, it's going to explode. And when it's going to explode, it's going to need all of us again to try to put this fire down, and it's going to be too late. And that is why, by the levels it is today, let's find way, and peace have to be found in that continent of Africa, especially in the Horn of Africa.
Thank you very much, Simon, for a nice speech. My name is Danfas Mabea from Kenya. And I'm a PhD student here, and I have an interest in writing my dissertation on the lost boys of Sudan. I managed to work with the UNHCR in the Dadaab, northern part of Kenya.
Which is United Nations High Commissioner for the Refugees.
Right. And where I managed to meet a lot of Sudanese refugees and Somali refugees. And actually I managed to meet some of the lost boys before they left for the United States. Now, there is debate over whether Sudan should be 2 Sudans, carried into half, so that we can have the Northern Sudan and Southern Sudan. What do you think about dividing Sudan into 2? Will that create peace in that region?
Thank you again, Mose. It's a Swahili word. I used it before here. It's a good question, especially when it comes to somebody who is familiar to the problems. And probably you know the answer yourself, but you don't want to spell it out to the audience. But let me do it. There is a book written by the vice presidents of Sudan, So Many Agreement Dishonor. And the war in that country has been going on since 1955. In other words, I was born in war. My kid was born in war. The most generation that is still alive today in southern Sudan, they was born in war. And every time when the Northerners came up with this idea of buying time in the name of peace, the Southern Sudanese always are the first to embrace that peace, including the peace that we have today, which is signed in Naivasha in Nairobi, in Kenya. That is known to the world today as CPA, Comprehensive Peace Agreements. that peace agreement was being embraced by the Southern Sudanese fully. Because believe it or not, no one wants to see peace even for 1 minute more than Southern Sudanese. Even for 1 minute. And according to that peace agreement, it's said after 6 years, people of Southern Sudan have to go to vote on referendums to decide whether they want to go to heavens or they want to go back to Islamizations and Arabization and enslavements. And most important, that peace makes it very clear that we have to work and make peace attractive. But unfortunately, the Northern Sudanese, they are not interested in peace because they are not interested in African people in that country. They are interested to kill every single one so that they will be left with land. That is what is happening. Now, that peace agreement is 4 years old. The most crucial, the most important item in that peace agreement up to today is not being implemented. The wealth sharing power is not being implemented, knowing that the oils which make Khartoum as the richest nation in Africa today, that oil coming from the south, and in particular from the state where I was born, the state where I was kidnapped and brought and given up as a slave. The border demarcations, which we have the maps during the colonials, where Sudan used to have 2 administrators. That is being cancelled. When we going back to debate that map, Khartoum saying no, because they created a map in 1982 that took most of the oil-rich area into the northern Sudan, most of the agricultural area to the northern Sudan. Believe it or not, that peace agreement is not going to go nowhere, unfortunately. We're going to have a bigger war in the Horn of Africa, and I said it before, because even that you are not going to get involved physically. You are going to get involved because when we run into your country, and you know when we were there. And it is not too late until too late. That peace agreement was brought by the United States, was brought by you here. And I told President Bush when I was invited into Oval Office that you have to protect that peace because that is part of your legacy. Imagine that for almost 50 years, Americans were able to bring that peace to the part of the world. And now, it's going to go like Oslo agreements. We have to protect it simply because we don't want others to get involved tomorrow. Of course, since the Northern Sudanese, they are interested in killing me. And they are interested in Islam, in Arabizing me and Islamizing me, which I believe very strongly that I'm all right with my religions. I'm all right with my culture and my heritage as African, even that they said it's a savage's culture. Sudan, in 2 years' time from today, or even less than 2 years, we're talking about maybe 14 months, whether anybody like it or not, Sudan is going to be divided. Simply because there is no peace compared to all these peace that being dishonored by the sitting government. They are not even genuine that to signing peace they still maintain the Sharia law as the law of the nations. up to today, then tell me where is the peace. Thank you.
If not, thank you for coming. Thank you, Mr. Deng, for your lecture this evening.